Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Hampel, again, it is time for you and I to team up for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on LordeStarfox Radio. This will be epic, as it always is, because we are heading back to the Beast of Bray Road. Absolutely delicious. I do appreciate you allowing me to replenish lost nutrients. Yet, without further ado, it is time for Lee and myself to take a walk into the madness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf, and everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures, once again, it is Midnight Lycanthropy time here on LordeStarfox Radio. Lee Hampel. Yes, you should recognize the name. He was here just a few weeks ago and will be a bi-weekly host for us. He is in Werewolf Square, specifically located on Bray Road in Wisconsin. He again has set up the late night fire for us so that we can burn the timber into the early hours of the morning and read a few more chapters from the Midnight Society book. Lee, my friend, how you doing?
Doing wonderful. Really good to talk to you, and thank you for having me on again. Thank you.
Yes, totally appreciate you. A lot of people were really intrigued and baffled, loved our last collaboration, are very interested in things that have occurred to you and such. So, yes, it's always great to sit down and try and figure out what the heck's occurring. What have you been up to, man?
I just been hauling hay and from the farm up there and bowling and enjoying the great weather we've been having here. March has been a wonderful month, and we've had a lot of sunshine, and that's always welcome in the Midwest and in the winter. So it's been fun-filled, sun-filled days.
That is very good to hear. As you stated, yes, always having a little bit of some nice weather when you're able to get out and about is something that is a necessity for sure. Well, before we dive into some of these really intriguing and creepy images you have sent us, recently I've been trying to figure out when the most modern encounter with the Beast of Bray Road is. When was the last time you directly had some sort of interaction? Was it within the last couple of months, last couple of years?
Well, I mean, interaction. That I guess that's kind of a general term. The last time I saw it was 2023, May of 2023, but it
Okay.
has been. I've seen tracks in February, I saw a very good set of tracks coming across my field that were not coyote or deer. They were the creature tracks, very straight line. We haven't had a lot of snow, so there haven't been ability to find the track lines as good this year as many other years. But I found a very good track line. I'd say end of February. So, and in fact, there were three of them. Three of them crossed my field in February. Three of the creatures. So interaction. I mean, there's been situations like that, or he, the time in on let's see, January 23rd is when he interacted with me very much, and we'll talk about that with the one track we have.
Wow, excellent. The reason I asked that is just I was trying to get an understanding and also would like your opinion on the topic. You yourself, I also, and others I work with from that area believe there is multiple of these. Do you think they are traveling up to per se Michigan and the LBL back and forth, or do you think this whole spot in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, specifically Bray Road, is pretty much the area that I would say they like to look upon as their stomping grounds?
Oh, I don't know if they travel to Michigan. I mean, they 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 are walking across my field in the snow and then just disappear. So I don't know where they go. But I mean, the tracks just stop, and that's not possible. It's not plausible. But I've seen that many times. I mean, I have five different types of tracks. We talked mainly about the five-toed, seven-pad track, which I have at least three or four creatures with that particular pad. And I have another one called fist print, another one I call hyena track, and there's several other that are not, not coyote or deer tracks. And that's the only thing that should be out in my field of any animal of any size. Of course, there's raccoon tracks, but they're very distinguishable. So I have no idea if they travel to Michigan. I don't know. I know they travel away. They leave in the middle of my field, or they start the tracks in the middle of my field. And so they're coming and going, but I don't know where they're coming and going from.
Very interesting. Being located right in Wisconsin, do you know if it's specifically Elkhorn and Bray Road that has a majority of these sightings? I do have a book I'm working on, and I have definitely some encounters from Wisconsin that I don't live there though, so I don't really know how far it might be in location to Elkhorn or Bray Road. Yet seemingly those seem to be the two areas that are like the hot spots. You being in Wisconsin, have you heard of spots elsewhere people talk about this, or do you think it's kind of right in Elkhorn?
Well, Linda Godfrey, who you know of Linda Godfrey, right?
Yes, I love her. Rest in peace.
Yeah, she wrote, of course, 20 books, and the book Monsters Among Us by Linda Godfrey. I'm three chapters in that book, but they would not call me Lee Hampel. My name in that book is Roy Smith. The publishers would not use my name. So if you look up the book Monsters Among Us by Linda Godfrey, and you see Roy Smith's pictures or what Roy Smith is, talking about, that's me. But she on her wall, when I would go visit her, especially when she's writing a book, she would write a while, and I'd come and read it and make sure it was valid, and I felt it was what the situation really was, whether the data and evidence was correct. And on her wall, she had a map of Wisconsin, and she had red 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 thumbtacks, I guess, but they were just a ball, just a red marker, I'd call it. And she would, when she would get a report, because she got many reports from many people, because she wrote many books on Dogman, and she wrote a book on the Dogman of Michigan also. That map had markers over almost the entire state of Wisconsin, but the concentration of around Elkhorn was significant. There was very evident that the number of sightings in the Elkhorn area was much more amassed and much more specific than any place else in the state. So that's why she called it the Beast of Bray Road, because that's her name, because of the number of sightings in the Bray Road Elkhorn area.
Wow. That is, again, a beautiful history lesson. I had known some of that, yet not all of that. And I do believe pretty much the way I painted it out in my brain, and also with the North American Dogman Project, is, as you stated, Linda had it set up the same way, more or less.
Mhm.
Pretty much Bray Road seeming to be the real hot spot, yet it was elsewhere for sure. The reason I ask that is, again, you're right there. You're going to have definitely a better consensus and thought process as to how things are unfolding, per se, than me up here in New England. I usually would hear it through somebody else. Well, to the audience, wait till you see some of the images Lee has to talk about tonight. I'm going to hand you the mic, my friend, let you talk about those images and blow everybody's mind.
Well, I thought tonight we would concentrate more on my personal sightings. I have seen the Dogman 3 times, the Beast of Dogman 3 times, and I have evidence. The one time I took pictures for 3.5 minutes with my iPhone 11 during the day, so I have evidence of when I was visually looking at it. We could talk about that. But if you, on your pictures now, we'll talk about that print, because that's a very significant print. Now, it's not a very good print of 5 toes and 7 pads. But when I was looking at it visually, it was 5 toes and 7 pad. And it was a very significant print from the standpoint. On May 5th, 2017, 10:30 at night, I pulled out of my driveway to head into Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, to go to Walmart, actually. But I turned on my driveway, and when I turned out to go south on Bowers Road, immediately on the side of the road, right on the shoulder, was 2 very luminous, brilliant, orangish red eyes looking at me about 3 feet off the ground. And I knew immediately that this was not a coyote or a deer or any type of animal that was in the area. Coyote and deer have greenish yellowish eyes, and not orangish red eyes. So it was very significant that I was looking at what I would consider not a deer or coyote. Okay, so he was 2 telephone posts down, so about 200 feet away from me when he was at the shoulder of the road. I instantly threw my brights on, accelerated, because I knew I was looking at the beast. And he immediately went down the embankment. Now, that embankment is 4.5 feet deep. And on May 5th, 2017, the grass was 1 foot tall on top. And he is looking over the top of that at me, coming down the road with my brights on. And he's looking over the top of that. He was the brilliant orangish red eyes. And I'm looking, I'm going to see this guy. I'm now probably 100 feet away now. I'm probably 1 telephone post away from him now. And so I accelerated, but immediately, I mean, how do you judge the wink of an eye? I mean, the blink of an eye. I mean, it was just immediately. It was 15 to 20 feet out in the field, and I saw he turned, looked at me with 1 eye, and that eye out in the field was as brilliant as it was up by the road. So it wasn't reflection. Then instantaneously, I mean, how fast? If for the people that haven't seen it, they can't realize how fast it moves, because instantaneously it was another 15, 20 feet out in the field. And again, it turned, and I saw one orangish red eye again. And again, and now it's 40 feet out in the field. My lights are not, reflecting to that degree out in the field, and so it's generating a light source. The eye was just as brilliant when I was looking at it as was when I was up by the road. So it was again another, like 40 feet out in the field. I saw one. He turned one red eye, then it was gone. And I didn't see any body. I thought I should see body. I thought I should see some form, but all I ever could see, and I was probably 80 feet away with brights on, and I never saw any body, which was, just always been mysterious to me for the last 8 years. And that was the sighting. Now, there's a lot more to that. Do you have any questions, Star Fox?
Creepy, yet very intriguing encounter / information right there. How do you feel while these things are occurring? Do you ever feel as if you are in trouble, or do you just get the natural feeling of anxiety? Seemingly, depending on the individual, I could see how those scenarios could affect people differently for sure.
No, I would say no. I know what I'm looking at. I know I'm looking at the Beast of Bray Road, so I am approaching it as scientifically as I can. Okay, what information can I now get? So I immediately went down the road and turned into a neighbor's driveway, turned around, came back to the area, shined my lights out into the field to try and maybe view it again, but it wasn't there. I didn't see it again. And I'm going to say what I thought I did was I then drove into my shed, and it was an eyewitness report. Now it's 10, 11 o'clock at night, or 10:45 at night, and it's an eyewitness report. So I want to tell somebody immediately, so that it's fresh, so that my mind doesn't manufacture something. I want to tell somebody immediately because it's fresh as I can possibly get it. So I pulled into my barn, my pole barn, and called my brother Fred, who has been helping me, and we talked about him last time. And he was a systems analyst for IBM, a computer engineer, and he's gone on quite a journey with me and this farm. But the indication was I would call him and tell him, so I would have another person who I immediately could talk to or would have the information. So I pulled in the barn, I called him, he answered, and and of course I told him in a very calm voice, I just saw the Beast of Bray Road. It was up right down by my driveway, and so I told him the story about what I had just seen, and what I was planning to do was then the next day was to go back and look for tracks, by the edge of that field, because I knew immediately where he was at, and he's actually a little bit outside of my field. He's actually in the neighbor south of my field, which was a cornfield that had been harvested, and there was debris in the field. But that was my plan. So we talked, and I went to bed that night, and wow, I don't know what time. And I'll tell you why that. But I became very ill, and with vomiting and running out to the outhouse. I have an outhouse there, and I became very ill during the evening. And I checked with the restaurant that I had eaten at a couple days later, and I said, "You have any food poisoning?" Because that's what it seemed like. But they said, no, we didn't have any food poisoning that night. But I became very ill. The next day, in the morning, he tried to call me. and I didn't answer. I finally had gotten to sleep, and I was, my stomach was upset, and I had a headache and that type of thing. And then he called my wife and my son, Jason, and he called them and he said, Lee saw the beast last night and he's not answering. And there's always this concept that maybe, people have disappeared, the 411 and David Paulides, and people do disappear, and there's always that in the back of, I know, my wife's mind and my brother's mind and other people's mind. So my brother Fred said, Lee's not answering his phone, so I'm going to go up there. Well, then our son Jason, he said, I'll go. So he came flying into the driveway there and into the barn, and he said, You okay? And I go, oh man, I don't know. I'm really sick. He said, did you see the beast last night? I said, yes, I did. I did see it. Orangish red eyes, and I told him what had happened. And I said, well, I'm glad you're here. I said, now let's go down and look for tracks. Now, I know you're my son, but you are another eyewitness. And any tracks that we find, I want to make sure that they're identified to be in that area, and I'm not out some other place in my field. So I'm approaching it as scientifically as I can to consolidate the evidence and the data into that particular point of the field. So we went down to the area where I knew exactly where he'd been, and the track you're looking at was the best track. There were other 5-toed 7-pad tracks, and this is a 5-toed 7-pad track. They were the only tracks there. So the creature, the beast that I saw with the orangish red eyes, made that 3.5 by 3 inch 5-toed track. They were the only tracks there. So that's why that track is significant, because that is the track of the creature that I saw, the beast that I saw. And there is no track expert will ever say that track is an animal track that's ever existed in the world. There's never been a 5-toed 7-pad canid track that's 3 by 3.5 inches. There's never existed and doesn't exist now. But I saw what made that track.
Dang. Again, that is absolutely nightmare fuel, as I like to say, but also very interesting because the data and analytics that is able to be gathered from such continuous interactions, for sure. I know on your farm you said that you deal with hay. You don't deal with livestock, correct?
I have no livestock on my farm. Not there. No, I do down in Illinois where I live. The farm is specifically for baling hay for the livestock that my wife has in Illinois.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Pretty much anytime you found anything, then it's been a deer, meaning on your property. I was just trying to get a consensus. Wow, that's, again, super creepy. And you have some more images you would like to touch base on too, eh?
Well, let's finish this one up a little bit more, okay? Because now it becomes a really significant part of this particular image. I was at a family gathering for New Year's Day brunch that fall. So it's been New Year's Day 2018. And I was talking with my brother Fred and my sister-in-law. And we were talking about, because it just 6 months before I had seen it, we were talking about that. And I said to him, I said, I'm sorry I called you so late. It was probably like close to 11 o'clock. And both he and my sister-in-law looked at me and said, 11 o'clock? No, it was after midnight. It was after midnight. We both looked, it was after midnight. And I go, there's no way it could have been after midnight. See, oh yeah, it was after midnight. And I thought, well, I'll call Mobile One, and I'll call them and get the information on the phone so that I know when I did call that night. Well, I called them and I said, I need my data from May of 2017. They go, no, we don't have that. And I go, wait, I saw on what's that TV show? A mystery TV show. I saw on TV where they went back 2 years. He goes, yeah, that's TV, sure. But we keep them 30 days. So they weren't able to keep the I was not able to identify the phone call through Mobile One, but there are two witnesses that I lost at least an hour to an hour and a half of time that night. From when I saw it to when I pulled in the shed and called my brother, I was someplace that I don't know where for at least an hour to an hour and a half. Now, Starfox, I don't know if you've ever think that you're in what reality is or isn't, but when I lost that hour and a half and I have no idea where I was at, that is very, very unnerving, I guess would be the word. And it's proof that I was, not in my shed, or I don't know where I was. I went down the road, turned around, came back, and shined my lights out in the field and pulled into the shed and called him. Now that's my recollection of reality, and I knew I left at 10:30. And so how do you comprehend that? How do you come to grips with something like that?
Very bizarre stuff right there, and also extremely interesting. There's a ton of cases covering missing people that my friends dive into because they specifically cover all missing people, meaning obviously I would always help anyone to find a missing persons, yet I try to focus on the ones that are falling into national forests and cave systems, etc. Yet in some of these cases, people do speak of something very similar to what you just mentioned, which just adds another layer of bizarreness, meaning they are in some sort of fog where they're disoriented and they do call for help, but then they're not really in the location that they think they are, and then they see these strange lights, etc., and then they're never seen again. As I stated, really strange but interesting stuff.
Very strange it is, especially when I lived it, and what I in reality is not what we're always looking at, because there was something that occurred that night. And I think with my illness and becoming ill and the loss of time was directly influenced by whatever that the creature, the beast of Bray Road, is capable of doing.
Would make sense. And again, you becoming nauseous and experiencing, as you stated, something that seemed similar to food poisoning. Mm-hmm. I've heard, again, of people becoming nauseous around not even just these dogman creatures, but a lot of cryptids. Also, I happened to hear an encounter of a family that saw, this is a long time ago, some sort of what they believed were space crafts that let off like a really strange oozing kind of mist, and there was like this grease across their mum and such, and they all felt like very nauseous or vomiting. Again, interesting stuff, and it just made me think of what you had just stated.
Interesting.
Right? Super bizarre. There's an underlying identity of something occurring here. It's just right on the tips of understanding, but still out of the grasp. I do know that animals also will use very loud sounds to scare their prey. More or less infrasound is what people would like to say. It is a real thing, meaning when a lion per se roars in the face of a gazelle or something, it stuns them, etc. It is very similar to sonar with dolphins. All again, very strange and bizarre stuff.
Yeah, your lions will do I think it's the infrasound. They'll do the lower sound too that will affect their prey. Yes, they do.
Great stuff. You got some more pictures too. You want to dive on it?
Sure. So on May 11th, 2021. That print is, again, not a very good print, but it is the 5-toed, 7-pad track. When I was looking at it, you could see it clearer, but you can see it's got like a clover leaf going around the outside, and that track it's not angular like a coyote track. It's circular, and that's my shoe there. It's 3.5 by 3 inches. And this is the second time that I saw the beast. This was on May 11th, 2021. Now, this was 3:30 in the afternoon, and I, going back on the west end of my field, that's the closest part to Bray Road, quarter mile from Bray Road. And I was going to pick up my cameras, my SD cards, and put them out I pick them up about every 2 weeks. So I pulled up to next to the camera, look out towards the west, and out in the neighbor's field, which was recently planted soybeans on May 11th. Yeah, I looked over, and here I'm looking at the beast of Bray Road. I mean, it's in the field. I knew immediately it was not a person or a bear or a deer or anything like that. I knew immediately it was huge. So I got out of my truck carefully. And it was a quarter mile away, and I started taking pictures with my iPhone 11, what I have here. Now, people say, why'd you take pictures? Well, pictures have 20 megapixels, and a video is 8 megapixels. And I wanted to get as clear a picture as I could at that distance. And I knew the iPhone isn't really designed for, telescopic situations, but I put it on zoom best I could and started taking pictures. Now, for 3.5 minutes, it was crouched down. It moved in that crouched position a distance in the field. It moved moved further west from me, moved further away from me for a period of time, maybe a minute or so. Then it stood up on 2 legs and walked directly west, directly away from me to the woods. When it got to the woods, it dropped down on all 4 and went into the woods. Now, that's what I saw with my eyes, and I have pictures of that. I've not released those pictures yet. It's a quarter mile away, so it's not as clear as I would like them to be. But what I saw and what the pictures on my camera indicate is exactly the same thing. So it was right there. And I have an individual who is a cameraman in Hollywood, and he helps me with some of the pictures. So I told him, I said, I have pictures of the beast of Bray Road with my iPhone. And he said, I have computer app, and it'll tell you exactly how big that is, how big that creature is. And it was huge. I knew it was, tall and huge. And so I sent him the picture, best picture I had, when it was standing on 2 legs and walking away from me. And he sent back, he said, the computer app says that creature is 6.5 to 7 feet tall, and the shoulders are 3.5 feet wide. And I said, is that accurate? That's absolutely accurate. Absolutely. So I have evidence of how big it is from pictures I took on that particular day.
Again, absolutely epic, creepy, bizarre, all in one sums up that whole entire statement you just made. Great stuff.
So again, you asked if it was what emotion I had or what I had. Well, it was an eyewitness report. Eyewitness reports, I said before, you try to state them as quickly as you can, and to someone, so that it's fresh in your mind, and your mind doesn't manufacture other situations that maybe it wants to put into the details. So who do I call? Fred, my brother Fred. So I sent him some of the pictures, and I said, okay, here, look at I just saw the Beast of Bray Road, and here's the pictures. He goes, oh my gosh. He goes, yeah. And I said, you got the pictures? And I said, yeah, but I want to go over there. Quarter mile across this field, and I just had seen this creature, the beast that I knew was huge. I didn't have the computer app obviously by then yet, but I knew it was huge. And I said, I want to go over there. I want to look for tracks. And I said, stay on the phone, because I've got to walk over there. I have to walk over there, look for tracks. So I said, stay on the phone. Now, if this thing comes out, just call the coroner, and I'll become Wisconsin folklore. They'll say that farmer, he went chasing that big beast, and it got him. But so I walked across the field gingerly and talking to the beast, and I say, "Come on out, let's visit," and so forth. And when I got to the area where he had been, this was the tracks that were there. This was one of the best tracks that were there, and they're the only. There were some old deer tracks, but again, it was May 11th, 2021. It was very dry, and these were the tracks that were there. Now, if you look, that's a good picture of the track. Now, if you look at the next picture where it's got some circles, that's a step. That's one step that it took, about 3 feet. I did not have a tape measure with me at that time, but it was about a 3-foot step that he was taking when he was walking on 2 legs, heading west from me away towards the woods. It's a step he took, about 3 foot. And I mean, he's huge. And I've seen 3-foot steps and 4-foot steps and 2-foot steps a lot of times. So that was very relevant, and also another reconfirming concept that it does walk. It is bipedal. It does walk on 2 legs, and I saw it walking on 2 legs that day. Now, if you go to the next picture, where it just looks like dirt, where it was crouched down, it drew circles in the dirt. You can see the disturbance if you zoom in or look in the center of that. You can see the disturbance of the dirt, and it's a circular motion that the dirt has been disturbed. You can look on the right top and so forth. You see that the dirt is solid. It's flat, or it's been rained on, and then sun has hardened it. But it drew circles in the dirt when it was crouched down. What does that other than a little kid? I mean, he was playing in the dirt. He plays games with me. He's it or whatever. He's very intelligent, and he does these things. He does things like he hit my truck with a stick one time, and other things have been unusual behavior. But here he drew circles in the dirt. There's evidence right there. You can see the circular motion if you zoom in on that center part where the dirt has been disturbed.
Wow. Again, very bizarre yet super intriguing and educational stuff right there. It's really good to be able to have you speaking about the images as they are right there in front of you, being able to tell us and walk us through how they occurred. Great stuff. Do you have a few more images you would like to touch base on? I know for our future episodes, you have so many more images, which is absolutely epic.
How much time do we have?
We got about 10 minutes.
Okay, you have those other images there, but I'll tell you about the third time that I saw it, and then maybe we can use those other images to begin this, for the next show.
For the next one, the handprints. Okay, cool.
Yeah. The handprint, because that's going to be longer than that's going to be a little bit longer. So the third time I saw it was May 20th, 2023, and I have at my farm every year. I have like an open house type situation, and I set up 20 people at a time to come, and $20 each, so it's pretty good. But I do an hour and a half pictures, discussion, and demonstration of the evidence, some of the evidence that I have. And from then we take a 30-minute tour of my farm on a hayride. So the people get to go on a hayride and drive around my field, and I talk about where, the UFOs have been seen and where the deer have been put, and that they just saw pictures of. And I had that on May 20th, 2023. Now the last session was 8 o'clock, so it got over right around 10 o'clock. An hour and a half of pictures and discussion, and a half hour of hayride. Of course, the nighttime hayride is always a fun one, But
Yeah.
So the people left, and I was picking up. I'll have to try to describe this the best way I can. I had put out some signs so people could see my address more readily. So I made some signs with the address on there, and I had those out by the road. Now my barn is about 200 feet from the road, with the driveway. The driveway has a little bit of an L shape to it. So I was at the road throwing the signs in the back of my pickup truck to take them up and store them for the next time. So I threw them in the back of my truck, and I was going to proceed up to the barn and unload them. Now my barn, the end door, the equipment door, is 25 feet tall and 25 feet wide. That was closed. The human door was on the side of that, and that door was open. And the lights were on inside my barn. So when I got into my truck, I just looked up, and I'm going to come down the driveway, and I could very clearly see the rectangular shape of the doorway and the light, shining out of the barn. And so I'm just, going to drive up and unload. Well, all of a sudden, a figure, like the top of his head was above the door. That's 84 inches. And here was a very clear figure of head, shoulders, arms, legs. And he stood in front of that door for approximately 5 seconds. Not a long time period, but plenty of time for me to look and go, "What are you doing? You stood there on purpose. You didn't have to go in front of the door, And that's what he does. He does this kind of stuff. He he stood in front of the doorway for about 5 seconds, and of course I immediately accelerated and drove around the barn and put my bright lights on, and not ever to be seen again that night. So he deliberately stood right in front of that doorway, and of course I don't have any pictures of that or any type of evidence of that. That would just be a personal sighting.
Jeez, that is, again, like I enjoy saying, some straight up nightmare fuel. So the terminology I would use is trolling. It seems to enjoy trolling you, meaning, just messing with you or screwing around, whatever terminology people prefer. As stated, I enjoy the term trolling. It could be worse, meaning I feel as if it really, truly did want you. It could get you, seemingly, especially in time frames like on our next episode, and some of the images where you said you only stepped away for a few minutes and then you come back. There's handprints, etc. I don't know. Still pretty messed up, though. I remember, again, rest in peace, Linda Godfrey was always telling people that more or less sometimes they were lucky because I guess she also never had seen an encounter with the Beast of Bray Road, as far as I know.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, pretty creepy stuff for sure. Well, it's always awesome to be able to sit down with people such as yourself. As stated, I've reached out to a ton of people. You and my friend Sophia and some others are really the only people that have reached back out to me. I've reached out to a ton of people, yet I do appreciate the ones that have taken the time to sit down and speak about their encounters, because there's just so much strange, bizarre stuff. And I do look forward to our future endeavors as well, because you have so many images on file. To the audience, yes, our next episode, he has a ton of great more images that you have not seen yet that I have that will be shared. Lee is a very busy guy. Do you have anything else you would like to touch base on tonight, my friend, before we do let you get back to your busy schedule?
Just thank you very much for having me. It's very enjoyable. I enjoy being on your show, and thank you for all the viewers, and I hope they enjoy and hope they have opened their minds have been open to a certain to a degree that this doesn't you don't make fun of people that have had these particular incidences. The area that I live in, many of my neighbors have seen it, but they will not talk about it because people ridicule them. So, hopefully I can remove some of that concept of ridiculing someone who says they have seen these cryptids or these unknown cryptids, unknown animals. But it's not an unknown animal. It's not a normal animal. It's something. It's supernatural, absolutely supernatural. And someday, maybe 50 years from now, my pictures and my evidence and my data, somebody will have more information about multi-universes or portals or doorways or whatever we want to call them, and they'll say, Lee Hampel had pictures of situations like that. So that's really my goal, is to keep recording data, keep reporting, and keep my log and my albums, and keep pursuing experiments in my hayfield. And thank you very much for having me, and thank you everybody who's viewing it. Thank you.
That is some absolutely legendary stuff right there. And you're already doing an amazing job getting out the analytics, the evidence, meaning it's not just human testimonial. You have images to back up what you're speaking about, which I'm really big on because I'm a person of science. And yes, obviously there are people out there that are telling the truth that don't have evidence, but again, there's also a lot of people that try to mislead individuals, yet tracks and situations that align to what's being spoken about is absolutely what we need. And it's really amazing. I do appreciate all the kind words you said and your time that you allotted to myself, the research that you're putting out there here on Midnight Lycanthropy. We're definitely always going to keep on getting your information and your images out to the public for sure. Yet to the audience, we do need to allow Lee to get back to things he needs to attend to. No worries though, you can find our previous episode down in the description below, or you can be on the watch out for our bi-weekly show, because Lee has so many images that we will be able to talk about in situations that are occurring. Until then though, this will be the conclusion of the meeting for the Midnight Society. It is the early hours of the morning. Thanks again, Lee, for hanging out with us, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Ooh, my creatures of the night, I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe, share the information to the algorithm, and we will catch you very soon.